Joining us now from Florida, Ben Shapiro, co-founder of The Daily Wire, host of the Ben Shapiro Show, and a #1 New York Times best-selling author. Ben, you write in The Spectator that the mainstream media, trust in the mainstream media, has been fractured beyond repair. And obviously that's been building for years. Why do you think we've reached the breaking point now?
I think that in all other cases where the media have deceived the American public on everything from their over coverage of Russiagate to their coverage of COVID to Black Lives Matter, there's at least been this level of plausible deniability where they could still make the case that there were studies supporting what they were saying or that there were experts who suggested the opposite. What happened during the debate with Joe Biden and Donald Trump is that a case they'd been making about Joe Biden for years, which is that he was mentally and physically sound, or at least sound enough to be president of the United States, was exploded just in public, and everybody saw it, and there's no way to deny it. And it was also perfectly obvious that the press had to have known that because obviously people who are in the general public were noting Joe Biden's pretty obvious decline over the course of the past couple of years. And so when the media came out with this extraordinary outrage, this shock and surprise at Joe Biden's status, I think the American public and the public generally looked at that and said, wait, you're not shocked by this at all. You're the ones in the room with him. You're on the plane with him. You're at all of his campaign events. You see him behind the scenes. And not surprisingly, we've seen a spate of stories over the past 2 weeks that have basically said what we all knew, which is that they knew for months, they knew for years that he was in a state of severe decline. Olivia Nuzzi's piece from New York Magazine being the most obvious case of this. But now, again, when people see this thing, you can't unsee the fact that there were people who knew about this for 2 years and kind of covered it up, and then it exploded, and there's no denying it this time in the way that there was about any of these prior sort of fibs that the media had been telling.
Well, with the possible exception of the White House press corps, I mean, his inner circle kept him increasingly away from the press, which I criticized all the time. I've covered him for 35 years. I probably know him better than anybody at Fox. And I only saw the deterioration and confusion that everybody saw when watching on TV. In other words, it isn't like journalists got to hang out with the president. He was kept in a bubble.
I mean, that's true, but with the exception of the White House press corps is a pretty solid exception there. There are a lot of people in the White House press corps, and it turns out that Joe Biden was going to events, and behind the scenes, he was meeting reporters at these events sort of in passing, and they could see that he was sort of glassy-eyed and slack-jawed, that he wasn't all there. This was perfectly obvious in bits and pieces everywhere, and not only that, there was an overt attempt by members of the media to proclaim that any focus on this was somehow out of bounds. I mean, the cheap fakes scandal was 3 weeks ago. Hey, that was not 5 months ago. That was not 2 years ago. That was 3 weeks ago when the White House was trotting out this line that all of these videos were cut out of context and that actually the president was doing just fine. And then as soon as the debate ended, the New York Times put out a piece citing exactly the same videos as evidence that Joe Biden had been in a state of decline for weeks, months, if not years. And so, again, the sort of shock that we're seeing right now feels like Captain Renault in Casablanca, that they're shocked to find there's gambling been going on here. It's like, well, you're not really shocked. I think that what the media have been shocked by is the fact that Joe Biden's campaign was incompetent enough to put this on full display. That's the part that I think shocked everybody.
Yeah, well, one of those...
If this is the... Sorry,
I was just going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, one of those videos with Obama leading his former vice president off the stage was not touched in any way. But let me turn to this. How much did the rise of Donald Trump, the overwhelmingly negative coverage of Trump, which seems only to help him, and his attacks on the media as enemy of the people contribute to this plummeting decline in trust?
Well, I mean, if you look at the statistics, the actual plummeting decline in trust began during the Obama era, not during the Trump era. So I've said many times that a lot of people are very angry at Donald Trump about his impact on American politics. They suggest that he's the person who did sort of the chief damage to the media. But that's obviously untrue by the polling data. If you look at the Gallup trust polls in the mainstream media, that's been declining since early on in the Obama era, and it really has never recovered. It went from about 50% at the beginning of Obama's term down to about 32% prior to even this last couple of weeks.
Right, but you had a president who was constantly attacking the media, which he had every right to do, and it was a sort of part of the running theme of that presidency.
But that was nothing new. I mean, if you recall back during the 2012 primaries, Newt Gingrich, to loud rounds of applause from people like me, was attacking the press specifically because during the Obama era, there was a reorientation of the press away from the idea that they were to hold truth to power and toward the idea that Barack Obama was a great light bringer who was to be sort of massaged into acceptability by the press at every available turn. And because of that, there was this widespread perception that the media had become a Praetorian guard for Barack Obama that they weren't even before that for other Democrats. And I think that Trump is a reaction to that. Trump, as I've said many times, is sort of the coroner of American politics, not the murderer himself.
Now, but the media at times have been sharply critical of the Biden presidency, the deadly withdrawal from Afghanistan, presiding over an open border that took many months to gain traction. So it's not like it's all one-sided, and it's not like you were supporting him before.
No, I think that what you saw in some of these cases, the border in particular, was sort of people arriving late on the scene. So the media, for the first few months, basically denied anything was happening at the border, downplayed it. And then, of course, as it became undeniable, then you have to cover it. And I think that's one of the things you're seeing right now is now Biden's decline is undeniable. And so the media now have to cover it because it's totally undeniable. But that shouldn't be the job of the media. The media should be first on the scene, not last on the scene. It shouldn't be some rando Twitter account that's covering the news. And 6 months later, the media are like, hey, by the way, that rando Twitter account, turns out he was right. It should be the media. They're the ones with the most access, of course.
All right. Just briefly, Ben, can the media rehabilitate themselves and avoid what you call in the piece the ash can of history?
I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to do so. You know, maybe they can do that if somebody, except for Biden, appears for the rest of the race. Let's say that Kamala Harris becomes the new nominee and Biden steps back. They would actually have to cover Kamala Harris critically, which is something they're going to have a tough time doing, given the fact that so many members of the media overtly would support Kamala Harris in the face of a new Donald Trump presidency.
Okay. I understand the challenge. I'm certainly wouldn't argue that the trust has declined for many years. I think there are many reasons, but it's great to have your point of view. Ben Shapiro, thanks very much for joining us this Sunday.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.